Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be talking about something that's becoming increasingly vital in the modern workplace, a sense of belonging. And we're not just talking about fitting in or ticking diversity boxes. It's about something much deeper, right?
Yeah. That deeper feeling of connection that truly makes people thrive at work. It's fascinating how this idea of belonging has really come to the forefront.
It does feel like kind of a buzzwordy term, right? But it really seems to be this hidden key to unlocking engagement and even productivity.
It really is.
And we found a study that really blew my mind. This Qualtrics study said that belonging has actually surpassed traditional factors like trust and leadership when it comes to what actually drives employee engagement.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And it makes sense when you think about all the different ways that work has changed. We have more and more remote teams, a greater focus on diversity and inclusion. Plus, this workforce that's really looking for more than just a paycheck, right? They want purpose, connection, a sense of community in their professional lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just clocking in and clocking out anymore.
Not at all.
So we're starting to see why belonging is such a big deal. But what does it actually look and feel like at work? What actually makes a difference between just being included and truly belonging?
Well, think about a time when you felt a deep sense of belonging. Maybe it was in a close-knit team, a hobby group you were passionate about, you felt comfortable being yourself, you could share your ideas freely, and you just knew that you were valued for who you are and what you contribute.
Yeah. Like that feeling when you walk into a room and you just know you're with your people.
Exactly. You just, you belong.
It clicks.
It clicks.
It's not just about, being invited to meetings or things like that. It's about feeling like you can speak up and your voice really matters.
Exactly. You feel safe to contribute. And there's research from Deloitte that really digs into this psychology of belonging. They say it's a core psychological need for comfort, connection, and contribution. It's about being seen, heard, and knowing that the work you do has meaning.
That's really powerful. One thing that really struck me in that Deloitte article was how they connected the rise of belonging to everything that's been happening in the world outside of work. You think about climate change, social unrest, political divisions.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. They're suggesting that all of this is actually driving people to seek a sense of solace and stability in their work communities. Which is interesting because that's, not traditionally how we think about work. It's like, leave your problems at the door.
Right.
But now it seems like people are craving that connection and support, especially during these uncertain times.
I think that's a really astute observation, and it makes sense, given our core human need for connection and support. Especially during these turbulent times, it's like people are looking for a space where they can feel grounded and connected, and for many, that space is becoming the workplace.
Yeah, like a bit of an anchor in all the chaos.
Absolutely.
I also was thinking, as we were doing all this research, can we actually measure something as intangible as belonging? Is it just a feeling, or is it something we can actually track?
Well, that's a really important question, and thankfully we found some answers in the GovLoop article, which outlined 3 ways to measure belonging.
3 whole ways. All right, tell me more.
So the first one is standardized assessments, kind of like a belonging barometer. These assessments ask employees specific questions about their sense of connection and belonging at work.
So you can actually see if your company's belonging score is going up or down.
Exactly. It helps you track progress, see if your efforts to foster belonging are making a difference. But it's not just about the numbers, there are more qualitative approaches as well. The second method focuses on regular check-ins with colleagues. Simply asking, how are you really doing? With genuine curiosity, it can be incredibly powerful.
It's so simple, yet so powerful. It reminds me of that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
I love that quote. And it's so true. Showing genuine interest in your colleagues' well-being can really foster a sense of connection, make them feel seen and valued.
Okay, so we've got surveys and check-ins. What was that third way to measure belonging?
The third method is stay interviews, which might seem counterintuitive, but it's all about understanding why people stay and why they leave. These interviews often reveal a lot about what really matters to employees, including whether they feel a sense of belonging.
That's interesting. So it's like looking at the other side of the coin, right? Instead of just focusing on what brings people in, you're also understanding why they might leave.
Exactly. By understanding those factors that contribute to retention and turnover, organizations can get valuable insights into the level of belonging within their teams and identify areas for improvement.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, we've been talking a lot about this from a company perspective, but I bet our listeners are wondering, what about me? What can I do as an individual employee to make my workplace more, belonging-y?
Yeah.
Because it can feel a little bit overwhelming to think about tackling something so big as belonging all on your own.
It can be. But even small actions can make a real difference. In fact, the Qualtrics article emphasizes the power of individual actions, particularly through storytelling.
Storytelling, how does that fit in with belonging?
Well, it's all about fostering deeper connections. Qualtrics encourages employees to share personal stories, talk about who they are, where they've come from, their challenges and triumphs, and importantly, to listen attentively to other stories.
So it's like creating these little windows into each other's lives, right?
Exactly. You'd be surprised how much this can build empathy and understanding, breaking down those invisible barriers between colleagues.
Instead of just seeing coworkers, you start to see a fellow human with a unique and valuable story.
Exactly. And that's where belonging really begins to blossom.
Beautiful. I love that. All right, so we've talked about what belonging is, why it matters, how to measure it, and even how we as individuals can contribute.
That's right. It's complex and multifaceted.
Yeah, but it also feels like something we can all work towards, both individually and collectively.
Absolutely.
So let's keep digging into this. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some more concrete strategies for cultivating belonging at the organizational level.
And we'll talk about some of the potential pitfalls to avoid.
We'll be right back after a short break.
It's not just about grand gestures from the company, right? It's those everyday interactions and moments of genuine connection that really make a difference.
I totally agree. And while those individual actions are super important, as we were looking through these sources, they highlight a lot that organizations can do to cultivate belonging on a larger scale.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about leadership training, revising onboarding processes. It can feel like a lot to unpack.
A lot to think about.
Where do they even begin?
Right. It can be so overwhelming trying to tackle everything at once. If I had to pick one thing for organizations to really focus on, I'd go with the Qualtrics research.
Oh, yeah, about managers.
They found that managers have a huge impact on whether their team members feel that sense of connection. I mean, think about it. A manager is often the most direct link an employee has to the whole organization.
So it's not just about company-wide policies, you're saying?
Nope. It's about empowering managers to create these micro cultures of belonging within their teams.
And that can start with something as simple as regular, dedicated one-on-one meetings.
Exactly. Where managers make it a priority to really listen to their team members.
That make them feel seen, heard, valued.
Exactly. Offer support. Recognize their contributions. It reminds me of that GovLoop article we talked about earlier about those check-ins.
How are you really doing?
Yeah. It seems like that advice applies just as much to managers as it does to colleagues.
Absolutely. And, going back to that Harvard Business Review study, just that simple question can have such a huge impact on how connected and valued an employee feels.
Right.
It's amazing.
It just shows the power of creating space for open and honest communication, not just, surface-level pleasantries.
Deeper conversation.
Deeper, really understanding the individual's experiences and needs.
Awesome. So, managers are definitely key, but what about the overall organization? Are there bigger picture things that companies can do to cultivate belonging?
There definitely are. The Great Place to Work article talks about the importance of fairness, making sure there's no favoritism going on and that promotion processes are transparent and equitable.
That makes a lot of sense. If employees think that promotions are based on anything other than merit,
yeah,
it can really erode that trust and undermine belonging.
Exactly. It can feel arbitrary or unfair.
Yeah.
And it's not just about being fair, it's about being transparent about how decisions are made and WHY. When people understand the reasoning, they're much more likely to feel confident and secure in their place within the organization.
Yeah. Transparency builds trust. And that trust is like the bedrock of belonging.
For sure. Another thing that several of these sources brought up was the power of celebrating accomplishments.
Ooh, yes. I love that.
Big and small.
Recognition, appreciation. Who doesn't love that?
Right.
It feels good to be seen and acknowledged.
It really does. But it's more than just a feel-good gesture. It reinforces that everyone's contributions are valued and that they play an important role in the team's success. When you think about it, that sense of being valued is at the very core of belonging.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it?
It does. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about onboarding. That Great Place to Work article emphasized how important it is to make new employees feel welcome right from the get-go.
Onboarding is so crucial. Those first impressions. They can really set the tone for how an employee feels about the organization as a whole.
Exactly. It's the perfect time to lay the foundation for a positive and belonging-rich experience. How do you do that? Well-designed onboarding processes, thoughtful introductions to colleagues.
Make them feel like they're already part of the team.
Exactly, and give them opportunities to contribute right away.
Yeah, it makes such a difference.
It does. Now, speaking of teams, we've got to talk about something that's become increasingly vital in the modern workplace: psychological safety.
Yes, that feeling of being able to speak up without fear of judgment or negative consequences.
Right. Knowing you can share your ideas, your perspectives, even if they're different, without being shut down.
The design thinking experts over at Deloitte really emphasized how crucial psychological safety is for creating that belonging environment.
Absolutely. When people feel safe to share those ideas, even if they're unconventional, it fosters creativity and innovation. And that brings us back full circle to what we were talking about earlier, encouraging people to share those unique contributions.
From the SHRM article, it's like a beautiful cycle.
It is. A truly belonging workplace is one where those diverse perspectives are not only welcomed, but actively sought out, valued.
It's that space where everyone feels comfortable bringing their whole authentic selves to work.
That's it. And that's where leadership comes in again. Leaders need to model that behavior, creating an environment where it's okay to take risks, make mistakes, learn from them.
If the people at the top E aren't comfortable being vulnerable, it's unlikely that their team will be either.
So true. It's about cultivating that culture of trust and openness from the top down.
All of this has been so insightful. But I gotta ask, is there a potential downside to all this focus on belonging? Could it backfire in any way?
That's a great question, and definitely something to consider. If belonging feels forced or inauthentic, it can actually have the opposite effect.
Like if it becomes this big initiative from HR, but it doesn't really permeate the culture.
Exactly. It can't just be a box to check. It has to come from a place of genuine care and respect for individuals.
Absolutely. And we have to remember that belonging doesn't mean everyone has to be best friends or agree on everything.
Right.
It's about respecting and valuing differences, even when there are disagreements. Creating a workplace where everyone feels safe to voice their opinions, even if those opinions are unpopular.
I love that. It goes back to psychological safety again, doesn't it?
It all connects. So there's this delicate balance to strike when it comes to belonging, right?
Yeah.
You have to be intentional about fostering it, but also careful not to force it or create a culture where people feel pressured to conform.
Absolutely. So I think we've covered a lot about what companies can do, but I want to bring it back to the individual level one last time. What's your final piece of advice for someone who wants to create a greater sense of belonging in their workplace?
For themselves and for those around them.
Yeah. It really goes back to what we discussed earlier about the power of personal relationships and storytelling. Take the time to get to know your colleagues. Really listen to their stories. And be willing to share your own authentically.
It's about building those genuine connections and recognizing our shared humanity.
Exactly. And recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a more belonging workplace. It's not just HR, it's not just the leadership team, it's a collective effort.
Even small actions can make a difference.
They really can.
Well said. And that leads us perfectly to our final takeaway for today's deep dive. If belonging is truly about bringing your whole self to work, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. What does that look like?
What one small step can you take this week to create a more belonging workplace for yourself and those around you?
Maybe it's as simple as inviting a colleague who often sits alone to join you for lunch.
Or maybe it's speaking up in a meeting to support an idea that's been dismissed.
Or maybe it's just taking the time to really listen to a coworker who's going through a tough time.
All of those actions, no matter how small they seem, can contribute to a more belonging and supportive workplace. Because ultimately, creating a sense of belonging is about recognizing our shared humanity. It's about seeing each other not just as coworkers, but as fellow human beings.
With our own unique stories.
Our challenges, our triumphs.
And when we do that, when we create that space for genuine connection, we unlock something truly special, a sense of community, purpose, belonging that benefits everyone.
I love that. That's beautiful.
It is.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of belonging at work. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and, more importantly, some inspiration to make a difference.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by something. It's like we've uncovered a hidden truth about belonging.
Oh, what's that?
It's not just about, feel-good vibes and being everyone's best friend.
Right.
It's deeply tied to how well individuals and organizations actually perform.
That's so true. We often think of productivity and connection as separate things, but the research is really clear. They're intertwined.
Exactly. Remember that stat we talked about at the beginning?
Yeah.
Belonging is now a stronger driver of engagement than even trust and leadership.
That's huge. It really highlights just how much the workplace has changed and what people are looking for now.
And what this means for you, dear listener, is that cultivating belonging isn't just a nice to have. You can actively influence this for your own well-being, AD, for the success of your team, your whole organization.
I love that. It's empowering to realize that even small actions can ripple outwards, creating that more positive and productive environment for everyone.
Absolutely. So as we leave you with this final thought, we encourage you to reflect on what really resonated with you today.
Yeah. Out of everything we discussed, what insights, what actions stood out?
What felt particularly relevant to your own work experience? And most importantly, what one step will you take this week to foster a greater sense of belonging in your workplace?
It could be anything, reaching out to a new colleague, sharing your story, or just, making a conscious effort to listen more deeply.
Because belonging is a shared responsibility. Every action, however small, contributes to creating a more connected, a more thriving workplace.
And on that note, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of belonging at work.
We hope you found it valuable and that you feel inspired to go out there and make a difference.
Until next time, keep diving deep.